Good afternoon. Welcome to the Glendale Water and Power Commission meeting. Today is October the 6th, 2014. Can we please have roll call?
Yes, and before I proceed with roll call, Commissioner Hale will not be attending today's meeting. Commissioner Jimian?
Present.
Commissioner Camargo?
Here.
Commissioner Yao?
Here.
President Chan?
Present. Next item, please.
2 consent items. A, approval of the September 15, 2014 meeting minutes.
I have no modifications or changes. How about the rest of you? No? Okay, if not, yeah. Please approve the minutes, please. Next item.
3, GWP Commission staff comments. A, GWP Utility Day, Thursday, October 23rd, 2014.
I'd like to ask Ms. Harotunian, our PBC coordinator, to invite you to our Utility Day on October 23rd.
Madam President, members of Commission, hello, my name is Atine Hartunian, and I'm here to invite you and our customers to our annual Utility Day, which will take place this year on October 23rd from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. at our Utility Operations Center. You can see the flyer is up on the television right now, and we also give you copies of the flyer. This is our annual Utility Day, which takes place every year at our Utility Operations Center, and we invite the public to take tours of our facilities, to meet staff, to learn about how we deliver reliable electricity and water. We will have presentations, booth, staff members there, bucket truck rides, free food and refreshments while they last. On that same day, we also invite students of local elementary schools to our Utility Operations Center. This is a more private event. The schools will be bringing about 200 students to our event starting at 8:30 until about 11:15 a.m. The students will go through the same booths and demonstrations that the public will go through. However, it's more educational for them. They'll also be given goodie bags on conservation information and electrical safety. And after that portion of the Utility Day is over, we will then open up the Operations Center to the public. So we invite everyone to attend. For more information, they can visit our website at glendalewaterandpower.com. And the event will take place on October 23rd from 11:30 to 2 p.m. And parking is available on Flower Street. Do you have any questions?
No, not for me. It sounds great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next item, please.
4, reports information. A, water conservation update.
I'd like to invite Ms. Harotunian again, our PBC coordinator, to give you the status of our water conservation.
Thank you. Madam President, members of Commission, my name again is Atine Hartunian, and I'm here to give you a brief update on our water conservation efforts. You want to go through? Oh, no, it's the... Could you give me one quick second?
No, we didn't.
Sorry about that. Thank you. On this chart, you will see that we have the results from August 2014 through the end of September of this year. Gloria, if you can make it into a slideshow, it'll more easily be visible at the bottom. Thank you. Based off of these numbers, you could see that mandatory water conservation was implemented on August 1st, 2014. The preliminary results show that customer usage has dropped 9.5% as compared to usage in the same time in fiscal year 13-14. So 13-14's color is the green color, and then we have the actuals in this red color. You can see the drop in usage. And then the blue line shows the projected amount of water customers would have used as projected in the 14-15 COSA without mandatory conservation. So it does show that our messaging is working. Our customers are responding well. These are just preliminary results because some of the numbers through September have not come in through yet because we are in bi-monthly billing. So we'll have more updated charts as we go along and make the presentations. We are continuing our mandatory messaging throughout the month of October. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Can I ask a question on the previous slide,
Yes.
please, Ms. Julian?
Sure.
So it looks like the COSO assumed increases in water usage for most months. Can you talk more about that? Is that to be conservative from a financial perspective? What was the rationale for the increase?
In our COSA, we anticipate that there'll be some growth in the usage, and that's before we factored in the usage from the conservation. So what we did, if you recall, we included what we call the drought rate, and the drought rate anticipates that we will have a major drop in consumption, but we wanted to keep us whole. And our plan is by January, we're supposed to come back to you and let you know what the impact is of not collecting the drought rate. Because when September 1st came, we're right into implementing a drought rate, and we did not want to introduce a rate shock. So what we did was we postponed the application of the drought rate for 6 months and see how that would impact our revenue. And when that happens, we'll come back to you and show you the full impact.
Okay, very good, thank you.
We'll follow up on that question. My understanding is that the projected COSA is based on the revenue requirement as well, right? So if customers are using less water, wouldn't that impact the department's revenues?
That's correct, and that's where we will come back to you. There was a conscious decision not to go to the drought rate because two things were happening. We're increasing the rate, and we implemented the mandatory conservation. What we implemented on the COSA is that when we go into mandatory conservation, which is step number 2 and higher, we would automatically go to a drought rate which is much higher than what the increase in COSA is. So in order to, like I stated, prevent a rate shock, we opted that, or the City Council recommended that we do not implement the drought rate for at least 6 months.
But at this point, you're pretty much 5 or 6 months revenue behind the revenue projected.
That is correct. We anticipated that in the 6 months that we don't implement, we will collect much less revenue than what we anticipated in the COSA.
So are you going to make it up in the drought rate, or you're just going to see what happens and just implement the drought rate without the makeup of the revenue loss?
We know that we won't make the revenue that we anticipated in the COSA by not implementing the drought rate. It's just a matter of how much can we take. And what we'd like to do, hopefully by the end of the 3rd month. So we implemented the new rate September 1st. So by the end of November, December, we would have the true impact of not collecting the drought rate. And we will report to you in the City Council what that impact is and make a recommendation accordingly. Okay.
Thanks, Ramon. Go to the next slide. Thank you. We are continuing our mandatory water conservation messaging throughout the month of October. These are a couple of our sample ads and messaging that you will see all over on our website, through social media, as well as advertising in places such as the Americana, Beeline advertising, online print newspapers, and bill inserts. Some of the ways that we are measuring our outreach is that we are tracking the number of calls that we're receiving, the number of people that are retweeting our messages through social media, and participation in our turf replacement program. So to put things into perspective, we have so far received 738 water waster phone calls. Through social media, we have reached over 60,000 people through our retweets, reshares, and reposts of our messaging and our conservation messaging. We have had more than 60 people already apply for our turf replacements. There are a few more on hold. Through our online ads and messaging, we've reached over 100,000 impressions of these types of ads. And just in the month of September, we have had over 1,300 page visits to our turf replacement website, as well as 800 hits or visits to our water conservation information page. So it does show that customers are aware of the different types of ways they can get information and program participation. So we'll continue to track that and bring you those numbers in the future. And if the temperatures continue the way that they do, we will be extending our outreach through the month of November, slightly changing our messaging a little bit. If there is rain in the forecast, obviously sharing the messaging in terms of watering less and turning off sprinklers before and after rain. So there might be just some slight tweaks to our messaging. And that's all I have if you have any other questions.
A couple of quick questions, if I can. First, what is the disposition of the water waster calls that have come in so far? What is the level of escalation you've needed to do on those?
I can we can come back to you with that because Tammy Valier, our customer service administrator, does deal with those calls. But I do want to let you know, as soon as we do get a call, we do generate at least 2 warning letters to the customer. So we do note the violation that has been checked off or complained about, and then the customer might call where we do explain the number of days they need to water. If the call comes in again, we'll send out another warning letter. We haven't gone to citations at this point. However, if there needs to be investigation, if the parcel is vacant, for example, there'll be cases where we have to go out and investigate. But so far, there's just been a lot of interaction with customers, a lot of phone calls, a lot of follow-through through letters.
Very good. And then another question. You mentioned that among the turf replacement inquiries that had come in or requests, that there were some that were on hold. Can you talk more about that? Why are they on hold?
Sure. The process is when the customer visits SoCalWatersmart.com, they can estimate their rebate. And so what happens is they measure their area where they want to replace the turf. And then they submit that for approval. And then they provide the before pictures, and then MWD gets back to them, Metropolitan Water District gets back to them and lets them know that they're approved for the program. So there's certain steps in the process where some customers will get the approval and then just sit on the approval and not go through with it. So what we do is we get a list every week of customers that have submitted the request for rebate. And what we'll do is we'll follow up with them and we'll send them our ordinance, a copy of our landscape ordinance, and just a letter encouraging them to continue in the program. And then where they are in the process is some might even have submitted their before and after pictures and they're just waiting for the rebate. Others are just waiting to literally kill off their turf and then start the program. So that's why we have so many customers in different steps of the program. But we do know for 60, in fact, that have put in their rebate estimate and are actually pursuing with killing their turf and purchasing plants, and they're filling us in on their progress as they go along, which is really interesting. So, and we're in constant communication with them, and then we know that they're also calling our planning department to make sure that they're following our landscape ordinance.
Thank you.
What is the latest rebate program?
We offer $2 per square foot for turf replacement with California-friendly plants.
Okay. Right. Anything else? Thank you for the
you very
update.
much.
Next item, please.
4B, resource mix and RPS update.
Good afternoon. This is a hopefully regular enough update for the Commission on where we are currently on complying with the California Renewable Portfolio Standards and acquiring renewable resources. So the topics that I need to go over today are just our status, which we think of in terms of megawatt hours and percentages. The percentages come from the statute, and then we have to convert them to megawatt hours. Reviewing the renewable resources in our portfolio, including a recent acquisition that was approved by City Council the week before last. Reviewing our power content label, which was filed with the California Energy Commission in September. That's something we do annually. And then talk a little bit about how we're going to move forward beyond the decisions that have already been made and what options we're going to be looking at to make sure we're in compliance with RPS going forward. So this is a graph that shows a fair amount of information in one picture. The middle green line reads to the right, so that shows the percentage of renewable energy that we have to acquire as expressed as a fraction of our retail loads over time. It starts out in the first compliance period at 20%, and we're finished with that. That was 2011 to 2013. We did comply during that time period. We were a little bit long. That is, we over-complied a little bit, which was the target we were aiming for. We didn't want to under-comply. And then that ramps up fairly steeply, as you can see In 2016, there's a big step up to 25%, and then it steps up at 2% per year until it hits 33% in 2020. After 2020, we don't know what might happen, but we're assuming it's going to be constant at 33% for the time being until the statute changes, if it changes. There are always discussions about increasing it from 33%. Now, once we know the percentages, then we have our expected retail loads, which is the top line, and that multiplied by the percentage, the retail load in megawatt hours, which you read off the left side, multiplied by the percentage in the middle, gives us our RPS obligation in megawatt hours at the very bottom in megawatt hours. And so this is what we think of in terms of the amount of energy or tradable RECs that we need to acquire each year to stay in compliance. And you can see it rises from a little over 200,000 megawatt hours per year to 400,000 megawatt hours per year during this decade. So this is what we're aiming at. This slide shows what we already have done. And some of these are fairly old. We have landfill gas inside the city. We have wind coming in from the High Winds plant which is in California, also Pleasant Valley and Pebble Springs. We have a share of a geothermal plant in the Imperial Valley. We have a share of a small hydro facility in Washington State. And then we have a little bit of solar inside the city. So it's mostly wind at this point, plus some geothermal and some landfill gas. Now, in addition to this, we have been considering several alternatives to ensure that we're in compliance going forward, because the resources I just showed you get us to 20%, but they certainly don't get us to 25 or 33%. So over the last 3 years, we've been looking at many options. In the last few years, 3 wind options that we could have exercised that were already under contract. We delayed that wind back off to LA for a period of time. We had the right to call that wind if we wanted to and call that contract right. We looked at the economics of that. It was very expensive, well over $100 per megawatt hour delivered, so we decided to let Los Angeles have the expensive wind. And then we started looking at some solar projects. Again, many of those were expensive once they got delivered. Even though the price of solar has come down a lot in the last 3 years, that's solar where it's produced, not where it's delivered. And getting solar energy delivered to Glendale requires we have to have a transmission path, we have to have another resource to back up the solar. And so some of those, by the time you start adding in those additional costs, turn out to be over $100 a megawatt hour as well. So we got involved in those negotiations through SCAPA. We've been tracking projects through SCAPA, but ultimately we rejected those projects on cost terms or uncertainty terms. Then we had an offer from a company called Schuyler Resources, with whom we've done business. They are an intermediary acting on behalf of a co-op in Nevada. They purchased energy from Glendale. We sold them energy for 10 years, 35 megawatts every hour for 10 years, delivered to them in southern Nevada. And Schuyler also has an operation where they're developing renewable energy. So at the same point in southern Nevada where we drop off the energy to Schuyler, which is not renewable, we're going to be picking up some energy that is at least half renewable. So we've executed a 25-year confirmation, a contract, a very short contract actually, that gives us between 40 and 60 megawatts per hour each day before the day of delivery. Schuyler will tell us what the amount of megawatts per hour will be. It'll be the same number every hour from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week, every day of the year. So it'll follow the output of the solar, but it's also firmed up by, or it will be firmed up by some gas-fired generation that's also going to be built in Nevada as well. So we'll have a firm supply of at least 50% renewable going out for 25 years. And that'll give us about another 150,000 megawatt hours a year of renewable energy. And if you look back here, you can see what we're doing here is following this line up from 200,000 toward 400,000, we're filling in at least 150,000 of that roughly 200,000 megawatt hour growth that we need to accomplish.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you go over those amounts again? How much are we delivering and how much are we getting back?
We're delivering 35 megawatts every hour to them 24 hours a day for 10 years. We're getting back from them, call it 50 just to pick a number, and it's going to be in the middle between 40 and 60, but we're expecting 50, 16 hours a day.
50 megawatts and 16 hours a day.
16 hours a day instead of 35 megawatts, 24 hours a day. So it's not exactly the same amounts, but these were numbers that fit within our portfolio and within their portfolio. That is their obligation to meet Valley Electric's loads.
And
How much are we paying for it?
The starting price is $78.50 a megawatt hour. It escalates at 1.95% per year over the 25-year period. The other solar projects that we looked at, one of them started that two other cities in SCAP assigned started out in the high 90s per megawatt hour, plus whatever it costs to firm it up and get it delivered. There are some projects out there in the 60s per megawatt hour where it's produced, solar, $60, $65 a megawatt hour. But then you have to add $20, $25, something like that, plus the uncertainty associated with that $20 to $25 over a 25-year period to get it delivered. Here we've got a markup of about $15 a megawatt hour, roughly, and it's fixed. Well, it's fixed with an escalator for 25 years. So we know exactly what this is going to cost us for 25 years. And it fills an energy need as well. It's not just, we're not just getting renewable energy, we're getting energy delivered to serve the customers of Glendale. This is filling part of our short position during this 25-year period, just our physical short position. That is, we need this energy just to serve the loads.
So the amount of money that's required for this, it's expected to be spent before December 2015, right? I mean, per year, there's going to be a certain amount going in. And is that included in the budget? This specific project is not included in the budget. The deliveries begin December 1st of next year. It will displace purchases that were already, to some extent, purchases that were already budgeted for funds that were already budgeted for the purchase of non-renewable energy that was already in the budget, and then there will be a premium on top of that that will have to go into the budget starting fiscal 16.
If I may, this is the energy that we have to purchase anyway. And so the energy that we budgeted to purchase to serve load is already budgeted. So instead of just buying, let's say, gas, this is a good deal for us because we also get the renewable credit. It's firmed, and we only pay it if we use it. So if they don't deliver, we don't have to pay them anything. We just have to replace them with another source. And I guess the bottom line is, will this have an impact on the rate?
That's
I
right.
think that's where you're leading.
Yes.
This will not have an impact on the rate because this is already energy that we budgeted to purchase, except we're purchasing renewable instead of a gas source power supply.
Okay.
so the budgeted rate is this rate over 25 years averaged out?
That's correct. For the course that we did, we have a certain amount of energy we need to purchase, a certain amount, and the revenue requirement, that's all been factored in. So this will not have an impact on the rate at all. If anything, it helps us stabilize the rate moving forward after the 3 or 4 years that we did the COSA, because we know exactly what we need to budget.
One other reason why we chose this particular project is that it is delivered, the energy is delivered at a point where we already have transmission rights to bring the energy to Glendale. So we don't have to worry about
requesting additional transmission service, buying additional transmission service, and living with the uncertainty of what that would cost as well.
So the setup cost for any installation or modification or anything like that would be really, really insignificant.
I'm sorry, setup?
Any costs, yeah, any setup costs or line reconfiguration or anything that's required to get this to happen is very minimal. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's none for us.
None, okay.
Yeah, it's Schuyler will have to work with Valley Electric to make sure that the Valley Electric system can get the energy to Meade, which is where we pick it up at the Meade substation. But we then have rights, ownership, and contract rights from Meade to Glendale, which we will use and which don't change and don't have any additional cost just because we're bringing this energy in instead of bringing in the coal-fired generation from New Mexico or Utah.
Which was costing us how much, the coal-fired?
The coal?
Yeah.
The coal runs between $60 and $80 a megawatt hour, depending on which source and whether there are any problems with the plant. For example, the San Juan power plant, which is scheduled to shut down at the end of 2017, has had some problems, and that drives the cost up, and it can get pretty expensive. So some of this is going to displace or is going to be a substitute for the San Juan, which is supposed to be shut down at the end of 2017.
Mm-hmm. Something like this will need to go through City Council, right?
It already has gone.
It already has, okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions?
Going?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this shows what our position is, our renewable position after we've made the purchase from Schuyler. You can see this is the obligation is, and this is all megawatt hours. The obligation is going from, as I said previously, from a little over 200,000 to about 400,000 over this decade. There's a big step up in 2016 because the Schuyler solar starts delivering at the end of 2015, so we'll get a big step up here. And then our expectation is that we'll just keep at that level for the remainder of this decade. Now, this difference here, which shows up also here as a surplus, if you will, or excess, is not renewable credits that we lose or cannot use. We can actually bank those credits and use them for compliance in future years. So we can either, depending on city policy, Glendale could either over-comply in these years, or it could save these RECs and comply later on out here, where we're not so sure about exactly what the obligation is going to be. If it steps up from 33%, we'll have something in the bank, hopefully, that will help us ease that transition to a higher level of obligation. This is our power content label for calendar 2013. It shows you in broader categories, not specific resources, where our energy came from. We actually had 28% renewable last year because we were making up for being under 20% in 2011, so we had to do more than 20% in 2013 to meet the average for the first compliance period. It shows that we were a little under 30% coal. That will be going down over time as San Juan shuts down and when IPP is repowered about 10 years from now. And then we'll be adding solar significantly to this row as we go forward in the future. And the second column shows the average for California. The first column is Glendale. So you can see that California, on average, was at 18.9% renewable, but we were at 28% last year. This has been filed at the CEC. It was due in September. So this is a little bit more detail on our obligations. We had a voluntary goal.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Looking at the power content label again, I noticed the large hydros included. Moving forward, that will be taken out, correct?
Large hydro is listed here as a separate category. It's not what's called an eligible renewable.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, and it will, I see, it will continue to be like that for the future.
Right, and, yeah,
separated, okay.
Separated, yes.
So all of the hydro that's included in renewable are small ones? at this
We
time?
only have one. That's the Tieton plant in
Right.
Washington.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, so this provides a little bit more description of the chart that I showed earlier. We had a voluntary goal, but that was converted to an statutory obligation starting in 2011, and this just describes the step up that I showed you earlier. We also have to devise, design, and have reviewed and approved by City Council a procurement plan. We've done 2 procurement plans in the last couple of years, and these are documents that demonstrate how we intend to comply in the future. Not what we're doing right now, but how we expect to meet the obligations out into the future. So we've got, with the Schuyler purchase, we have enough renewable energy to get us to 2020. We can put that into our procurement plan and say that on an expected basis, we will be in procurement, probably over procurement going forward. We may end up purchasing some additional short-term renewable energy to meet load if the prices are appropriate. Earlier this year, the prices were quite attractive for buyers, and so we purchased blocks of renewable energy to meet load this year because we needed to meet load and because the renewable prices were attractive, and we were able to capture those RECs at a fairly attractive price. I expect there will be a revised procurement plan sometime this fall. There is the option, we talked about retail rates earlier. To the extent that there are incremental costs, we do have a regulatory adjustment clause to pass those costs through, not touching the base rates, but using the adjustment clause. That adjustment clause can be invoked twice a year, 1st of July and 1st of January.
But that will still have a direct impact to our ratepayers, correct?
If the regulatory adjustment charge is positive, that will be an impact on the ratepayers, yes. And the regulatory adjustment charge captures a number of different items that might change in the future, yes.
Question for you with respect to cost. So can you summarize for us the cost differential, I guess the cost of compliance, moving from where we had a self-imposed target of 20% by 2017, so perhaps that's one way to think about it, is the difference between 20% and 33%. Be interested to know, given the fact that the renewables are more expensive than other sources of power, what that delta is.
To get from 20 to 33%.
Or if you want to think about it this way, so what is the cost to compliance in terms of rates for customers?
I could do a quick calculation, or I could, whichever you would like.
Yeah, well, we can probably get back to you on that, but the way we set up the rate, the new electric rate, we set up an adjustment charge, which is the RAC, the regulatory adjustment charge. And in terms of impact moving forward, we put a cap of 5 cents per kWh on that for the adjustment period. What we're doing is we have a budget amount for regulatory expenses to meet compliance. And if we exceed that budget, that goes to the adjustment charge. So that's how we're capturing that, and we don't believe it will be that much more. Although in the past period we exceeded the 5 cents a little bit, but we capped it at 5 cents. So we do not put all the burden on our ratepayers, but it does reflect on the bill or the on the rates eventually. But it's adjustable, not a fixed rate.
Okay. And then I suppose a related cost-related issue to me gets to, what are we trying to do as a utility? So I hear you saying that we are likely to be in a position of overcompliance, which on the upside, having that margin can be comforting. On the downside, with respect to cost, wonder whether that is the best thing to do in terms of rates and customers. So what is do we have a philosophy with respect to that that is trying to come in right on target, over compliance? What are we striving for?
Well, in the first compliance period, we were striving for a small overcompliance because we were concerned about what the penalties might be for undercomplying. As we looked out into the future over a longer period of time, we had to considered several options, and because of the relative cost of the other options that we rejected relative to the purchase that I was just describing, and the need for any developer, and this was true for all of the projects that we've looked at, to have a long-term revenue stream, and because of the economies of scale of going into, say, a 50 megawatt project versus a 20 megawatt project or even smaller, the price that was offered to us was the most attractive that we had seen in ever, actually, in all of the projects that I've looked at. So we faced a situation where we could go with a more expensive project and perhaps a smaller, more expensive in dollars per megawatt hour, but then not have the overcompliance because we'd buy less, or we could spend a lot less per megawatt hour and have some overcompliance in the near term. That's the trade-off we faced, and especially given the constraint of where we could get the energy delivered and the uncertainties associated with all the other projects and the relative certainty associated with this project in terms of delivery and price. Our recommendation to City Council was that we should go forward with this project, even though it would lead to overcompliance in the near term, with the recognition that those RECs are a commodity, if you will. They're an intangible asset, and they can be saved and used later.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, we are not, because of the attractiveness of this particular package, this deal with Skylar, we were not sacrificing cost for overcompliance. In fact, the deal that you were able to achieve is more affordable than some other options that might have zeroed in closer to
Yes.
The actual target.
And so we ended up buying energy, renewable energy credits, and effectively some insurance against cost increases in the future. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned about this particular project also, and this is true for solar in general, is the investment tax credit is scheduled to expire at the end of next calendar year or the year after. I think it's the year after. And that ITC is worth roughly $20 to $25 a megawatt hour. So we were able to capture the value of that through this process of acquiring the power from Skylar. So the expectation is there are potential cost increases or potential cost decreases if technology changes. The ITC going away is a significant risk, and we wanted to make sure we didn't lose that, because then the price would have gone from 78 to 100.
Okay.
The tax credit was for the period of time until the tax credit expired, or was it the amount of, did it equal the actual contract price of the entire energy purchased over the?
Well, the tax credit is reflected in the initial offer price and the escalator. So they were able to offer us $78.50 because they knew they were going to be able to capture a tax credit somewhere else to help fund the project.
Oh, they're getting the tax credit.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't really.
Well, they
You're
get the
passing
tax
it on
credit,
to us.
but we get the benefit of the tax
Right,
credit.
in the $78 price. And what was I'm sure you looked at this math, over the 25 years at the 1.5% increase, what is the average rate that we're paying for this contract?
The average on, I don't have that number in my head.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
We can get back to you.
I'm sure it's somewhere about 110 or something. It's probably, I'm assuming it's compound interest, right?
1.95% per year, compounded.
Compound, 1.95%.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And the other solar projects that we looked at had escalators as well, typically. I mean, you either start out with a high price without an escalator or a lower price with an escalator, and so you're just managing cash flow at that point.
Maybe this is a question for Mr. Rebecca as well, but when you take a look at solar energy, for example, I mean, over the last 5 to 10 years, it has decreased in price greatly. And to get into 25-year contract, one of the things you're doing is you're kind of saying, that the price is going to, you're making the bet that solar energy price will increase or stay the same over the next 25 years to a certain degree, right? Why not enter into a smaller project and wait for 5 years and see where technology is, where you can then enter into much lower, lower or cost-effective projects?
We did take a look at the different options, and this is the best option that we thought is good for us. The main reason being, this is a firm contract. A lot of the solar contracts that we've encountered out there, it's firm. So when the cloud comes in, power goes out, we have to firm that up. And the additional cost of firming solar is just as costly as the deal itself. So at times we double the price that we pay for. And then in our case, we have also an agreement where in our timeline, we have to maintain a balance of load and the energy that comes in. And there's what we call an inadvertent that if we don't operate within a certain bandwidth, LADWP will charge a significant amount for the megawatt that they need to compensate for the load, for the energy that we didn't purchase to supply our load. So taking all that into consideration, we do believe that this is one of the best deals that's out there. Like Lon stated, we looked at about half a dozen different solar deals. Some are short-term, some are long-term. Unfortunately, this one, it's a long-term or no deal.
Right. I'm not. Obviously, you guys thought this was the best contract, and you already signed about it.
Yeah.
But even that difference that you have to make up, I'm sure you can negotiate or get into other contracts that'll make up that difference, if need be. I'm just only part that I'm thinking about is entering into a alternative energy deal for 25 years on something that is gonna.
It's a risk. But,
it's a huge risk. I mean, that price can come down to $20 for solar in the next 20 years. I mean, who knows?
Right. And the other deals too, and that we factored in is that there's some costs associated with the plant itself. If there were any stranded costs, let's say go the opposite way. Let's say the solar project that we invested to in the other deals, let's say they tanked, we'll be responsible for, if they bonded the project, we'll be responsible to bear that cost for the life of the project. So there are a lot of considerations we made.
Sure.
And to be perfectly honest, I was skeptical the first time this deal was presented to me and had to ask all those questions of Mr. Peters because of the term, the 25 years. The other good part of this deal is if they don't deliver, we don't have to pay them anything.
Right.
So the risk, there's risk in terms of the prices going up or down, but in terms of risk of being committed and tied to this, if the project fails, we don't have any obligation whatsoever.
Right. And besides the term, was the amount per energy purchase, was that also, it had to be at that level 40 to 60, or?
That was the size of project that they wanted to build.
I see.
And
Specifically for this contract.
Specifically for this deal, and it gets economies of scale. Another reason, or another consideration, let me put it this way, with respect to short-term contracts is that if we have any excess, let's say we signed a 5-year contract, if we had any excess procurement in a given year, we could not carry that over into the future because the rules say that you can only carry over those RECs for future compliance if it's under a long-term contract, which is defined as at least 10 years.
I see.
So there's a break point there where
10 years is the mark.
You get no insurance value.
I get the 5-year discussion, but not the 2. But yeah, okay, understood.
The other benefit also, the excess RECs or the renewable energy credits, there may be some market for us to sell that to somebody that needs some credits, and that's something that we are keeping an eye on. That could be valuable. We don't know what that price will be in the future. So
Okay.
it's an investment.
I was looking at the agenda. Now, how often do we get these resource mix and RPS updates? Quarterly? Or
Once a year is when we have to submit to the
once a year?
CEC.
Okay, I mean, this conversation, I think, demonstrated that it really shouldn't be once a year. We really shouldn't hear this after the fact. I feel, when important decisions like that are made, 25-year contracts and, huge amounts, then I think the commission should hear about it. I understand, we are sent agendas going to city council. However, a lot of times we may not catch all of them. So I request anything major like this that it be brought to the commission. For instance, all of the commissioners have a lot of questions about it. And I understand now it has been approved, but none of us were really aware of like the ins and outs and what were the other offers. And even if it's just informational purposes, I think it would be great if it can be discussed with the commission before going to council.
Yes, we will do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One other question. I think some time ago, about a year ago, maybe or more, on the last update, maybe, there was a discussion. I think GWP had hired a consulting firm that was doing some work on the Shoal Canyon landfill potential opportunity for mechanical waste energy separation. Whatever came of that, where are we with that?
We're on the last bullet of this slide.
Okay. All right. So.
And this bullet refers to the fact that we're starting an integrated resource planning process, which will incorporate that effort and that investigation.
Okay. So they finished their consulting?
No.
They haven't?
No. They finished task one. The name of the firm is Venture Engineering. They're in Pittsburgh. They finished one task, which was to look at the costs and the potential revenues of cleaning the landfill gas up to the pipeline quality and then putting it into the SoCal gas pipeline where it could be sold to someone else or we could burn it over at Magnolia, for example. They are now looking, Venture is now looking at, in their task order two, the cost of cleaning the landfill gas up only enough to burn it in new facilities at Grayson. And that's part of the integrated resource plan that we've just embarked on.
No, that's of the actual landfill gas, but were they looking at the actual landfill itself and the mechanical separation of recycled material and stuff like that, or was it
No, they're only looking at the current supply of landfill gas that naturally occurs in the landfill,
right,
and that is cleaned up a little bit at Shoal and then shipped down to Grayson.
Have we at all looked, or is waste energy part of a discussion of renewable for us?
Not currently, Commissioner Jimian. I believe that's being looked at separately as to do what to do with the landfill. There's some consultants that have come in and made some proposals, and that's being evaluated as to what the best option is.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see if you guys have any idea of what that it would cost, if you're comparing it to solar or wind, what that piece of energy would cost, besides clearing up the landfill or adding to it, what that would cost versus the other sources of energy that we can buy.
Commissioner Jimian, one of the consultants that came and presented to us the cost for basically the cleaned up gas would have been a lot more, and it wasn't cost effective for us, so we told them that it's not going to meet our needs. That there's only one consultant that have met with us, gave us their presentation, and their pricing, what it would come out is just too expensive for us.
Okay, that's for the gas though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So for the time being, we're relying just on the landfill gas itself. But that could change in the future, depending on technology and costs.
Sure.
And regulations regarding how the landfill is operated as well. So in August, City Council approved two contracts, one for integrated resource plan that was with PACE Global, which is a division of or a subsidiary of Siemens, and an owner's engineer, which is currently called Processes Unlimited, but changing its name to being acquired by Stantec. We've started the integrated resource plan process. It will take approximately 6 months. The owner's engineer, Stantec, will be providing input to the IRP in terms of options for repowering the Grayson Power Plant, except for Unit 9, which is relatively new and which we would expect we would keep.
But the options that are being studied would demolish the rest of the plant except for certain auxiliary equipment and Unit 9 and replace it with new equipment. And PACE then will take that information regarding roughly a half a dozen options for Grayson itself and put that information into a portfolio analysis that takes into account all of our other resources, coal, nuclear, hydro, other renewables, and then run an hourly dispatch model for 25 years that will show us the portfolio cost to the city of alternative ways of meeting the RPS standards, alternative ways of meeting load, alternative investments we might make, for example, in transmission. And then we'll come up with a recommendation or a set of recommendations or a limited set of options to present to Commission and Council in the spring of 2015 for a decision about what to do. Now, what to do includes how we will meet RPS obligations, how we will manage our carbon emissions, especially after 2020 when the carbon allowances, the free carbon allowances go away, or we assume they're going to go away. What options there are for expanding, modifying, adding new demand-side management programs, energy efficiency programs, for example. What we might do to expand solar inside the city, if that's cost effective. What kind of load growth we should expect based on population growth, income growth, and perhaps even an increased penetration rate for electric vehicles. And then we'll be looking at alternative cleanup for the landfill gas, alternatives for Grayson. We'll be looking at energy storage alternatives at 3 different levels: behind the meter, substation level, and transmission grid level. So we have a sense of when those might be cost-effective additions to our portfolio as well. And as I said, that will be done, we expect, in March, and then we'll come back with recommendations and presentations to explain all the work that's being done and present options for decisions. That's what I have.
Okay. Any other questions? No?
Just one question. So has there been any chatter about what might follow this in terms of a new statute, if any, to increase the requirement beyond 33%?
There have been proposals that have not succeeded to increase it to 40%, and I think there was there was at least talk about increasing it to 49% at some point in the future, perhaps 2030, 2040. Mm-hmm. But there, at this point, we still have just the 33% target.
Right. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, please.
4C, root cause analysis for preventable outages.
President Chan, Commissioners, last month when we were presenting the KPIs, questions were asked about outages and why some of the outages were called preventable, what were preventable. And you asked how we do the analysis when we have the outage. So I'm going to go through the program that we have. We do, since 2005, we have been doing root cause analysis on all the outages that we have, whether it's simple or not. We make a decision whether or not we need to analyze it further. It's more than just replacing a blown fuse. Finding what caused that fuse to blow to begin with. Was it designed properly? Do we need to do anything else? So let me go through the analysis that we do on a regular basis. So there are 3 key elements in our root cause analysis. First and foremost is the data collections. We have to make sure that we have the right information to analyze before we can go through the analysis. Then we make some recommendation solutions, and we try to mitigate it. The main thing is for that same outage, for the same cost, will not happen again. And I believe this program had been very successful since we started it. So how do we collect data? It all starts with our dispatchers, the phone calls that we get from customers that reports an area that's being out, the data that we collect through our SCADA system that identifies the circuits that are operated, and it gets down to looking at what we have at the relay events, We have disturbance monitors that we have installed in several locations, key locations. Based on disturbance events, we can actually find out whether or not the outage is caused external to the system or internal to the system. These are on major events where it affects more than one or two substations. Just based on the properties or the waveforms, we'll be able to determine that right away. Then we do field investigation. We look for any visible signs that identify where the problems might be. So these are the data that factor into what we consider that identifies what actually caused the problem. Then we also look at historical data. Had this happened before? Did we miss it? Do we need to do a further analysis? Definitely, if you notice that it happened more than once, we will dig a lot closer into our protection system. Are they working as intended? Or is this just an odd case where it just happened at different causes? We looked at our maintenance and records. We look at have we done the right maintenance? And we focus mainly on our protection again. Is it operating the way it was intended to operate? Should it have picked up the outage or not, or should it have done something else? So this is a little small for the screen, but this is the flow chart on when we do an outage restoration. So the first thing is we have an event that causes our breaker or the substation to sit. It operates a breaker. It causes an outage. And in our system, we have several, since we started the modernization, we now have a device that's called a recloser. So what it would do is if it's a temporary fault, there's a lot of temporary faults that we see with birds, once the birds clear, or mylar balloons once it clears, or even squirrels or tree branches, they clear. We allow it 10 seconds to clear with the circuit recloses. Everything is good. With the relay, we automatically test, restore, so the outage will last about 10 seconds. If it stays closed, we still patrol to make sure that we identify the system. Now, if it doesn't stay closed or it doesn't hold, that means we have a problem that's more permanent. So what we will do then is do the inspection, the patrol, try to identify the problem areas. In some cases, this is why customer calls are important. Somebody would report to us, hey, we heard an explosion here. That helps us focus where to look for. But the good news is once the OMS DMS system is implemented in the next few months, that will be a tool that we can use in the office without having to rely on phone calls coming from customers. So that's coming. And then we look at when the indices that you would notice, the indices that we have for the amount of time it takes us to restore is a lot shorter than most utilities, because the philosophy that we have here is we isolate, restore, then do the repairs. In the old days, we used to just keep the outage, make the repair, then restore. So one of the goals that we have is to get the service restored to the most people as soon as possible, then we'll focus on the repairs later. So this is the process that we get to, and bottom line is we try to identify where the problem is, okay? And in the outage analysis, after we have an outage, the report will come in, and will get reported automatically, and basically, hey, this is outage so-and-so, number, the date, we have the information, it goes to our outage database, and then we decide, actually our principal electrical engineer, Mr. Avidian, will make a determination whether or not this is a temporary outage, permanent outage that needs further analysis. We assign an engineer, we complete the analysis, and then we make the recommendations, create the work order, then we close the loop. And let me walk through the anatomy of how that works. This is a typical problems that we used to encounter. We have very few of this anymore. This is a one-line diagram of a distribution circuit where we have what we call inline fuses, then goes to a breaker. What normally happens in this time of kind of event, if there's a fault at the end of the line, the two fuses opens in the circuit breaker also opens. That's not what it's intended to do. What's intended to do is to isolate the fault as close as possible to the source so that the rest of the system is not affected. So we'll take a look at that. And what we do is review the coordination of the circuit. Why did that happen? If you several years ago, I think we showed when we were doing the conversion of unit Montrose number 5, I forget what year it was, we explained how the relay coordination works. What this tells us is if there's a fault at this magnitude here, looks like all the fuses in the circuit breaker will all see it at once, they will all operate. They're doing what they're supposed to do. What we're not doing is allowing for the first fuse to see the fault isolated before the second fuse or the relay at the substation sees the fault and operates. So what we would do, what the engineers would do is say, hey, this is a situation here. We need to change the fuse or adjust the relay so there's plenty of separation between the two devices to operate. And so the result of that, the outcome is we basically said this fuse is too high. We select a much smaller fuse that allows it, the green means it opens. So we have a fault, it opens, but the fuse, this fuse here remains closed. The breaker doesn't see it. So that means that the outage is limited from this area to here, and the bigger area remains with the lights on. Okay? So the objectives is really, it's about reliability. We want to improve reliability. We want to identify the problem areas. And the key here is we want to prevent recurrence of the same event or the same cause. I mean, can we guarantee that a feeder will never be out? No, but at least we can say that the root cause of the original problem has been solved, been corrected. It's something else that caused it. So any questions on that?
And how long have you been using this process?
Since the bird problems we had in 2005.
2005.
In 2005, I believe I made a presentation because at that time we were losing 2 substations at a time. Every time a certain bird gets into a circuit, and we would always report that it's a bird or a plane. No, it's a bird. And when we looked at it, it's really not the bird. The bird is what triggers the problem, but the root cause was our relays were not coordinated. So instead of isolating the problem, it's taking 2 substations out. And for about 6 months, we had 3 events that took the northern Glendale, about 3 times in about 6 months. And that's when we said, okay, this can't be the bird. So we take a look at it. And since then, we haven't had any event. We've had the bird do the same thing, did its dive into the circuit, and it didn't cause an outage because we did what we needed to do. So that was a good test for us.
Okay. So you've started using this process since 2005?
That's correct.
And we've seen
significant
dramatic improvements?
Correct. The telling point, next January, I'll do another report on our reliability. We don't report back as far back as when we started looking at it. Before we started this process, we had a SAFE, the average frequency index, of almost 3. That means if you live in Glendale, you can expect an outage of at least 3 events every year. We have cut that down to under 1. We're about at 0.9 something. And that's a significant improvement for us. We used to have our response, the KD, in trying to restore, we used to be over almost 3 hours. We're down to less than 40 minutes. So we have made significant improvements. Can we get better? Yeah, once the OMS, DMS is in place, we think we can improve that some more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember these reports over the years, and I have been continuously impressed with the numbers. They're usually less than what the other utilities are seeing. In terms of cost and labor, so we're not, I mean, how expensive a process is this? Can you describe that to me?
It doesn't add any additional cost. Yes, it does add more work on the analysis. But if we're going to repair it anyway, let's do it right rather than trying to just Band-Aid it. So that's what we've been doing is instead of just, okay, this cable fell. In the past, we would replace that piece of cable, and now part of the analysis is this cable 30 years old, and does this cable run go from point A all the way out to the other end? So what we would do is replace the whole run, we call it the run, as opposed to just replacing the section and splicing it. And so the additional cost is we're just investing in now rather than later. If you recall back in 2006 also, that's when we said that in the next so many years we'll be investing $100 million into our system, and that had paid off. We did invest that much, if not more, in trying to make the improvements.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay, next item, please.
5, oral communications.
We don't have any today. Next item, please.
6, agenda forecast.
Okay. Earlier, let's see, when we got the RPS resource mix update, I think I didn't get his name. The gentleman who presented it. Huh?
Tom Peters.
Yeah, Yampi indicated that he would come back to the commission, I believe he said March. Looking at the forecast right now, we have the IRP update in January.
Yeah,
Do we want to leave that there and then additional one in March?
Yeah, President Chan, the intent is to give you an update on how we're doing with the IRP. At
Yes.
that time, we would have some preliminary data, and
Okay.
we could keep you apprised of what's going on rather than waiting for it to be completed.
Right, okay. So we leave that one there in January. And do we want to add another one for another month further down? I think the anticipation is that it'll be completed in March, right?
That's correct. So we anticipate going to you with a final report in April.
April, okay, should we just put that down?
406,
Yeah,
please.
let's put that in there. IRP, final, April. Okay, so we get another water conservation update, that's good. November. KPI update December, that's good. We have a lot in the December meeting. Let me see here.
We can probably move the legislative update to either January or February. I don't believe there's too many activities going on.
January or February, legislative update, okay. How about February? And we actually do have another item here, the request for appeal. Do we,
Well, President Chan, you'll have to consider whether you intend to grant an appeal, and if so, then you can consider which agenda you'd like to place
we'll
it
just go
on.
back, we'll just go
We can
back to the
that,
agenda.
yeah.
Yeah, so at this time, we'll just go ahead without considering that. Okay. Any other changes for December?
I would have one suggestion, just to help our institutional memory here. So as the meeting minutes captured, one of the requests was that future KPIs include targets for those that have targets, like SAIDI, SAFE, et cetera. So I would just ask that for that agenda item in December, we recharacterize it as KPI update first quarter with targets.
With targets.
Oh, yes. Targets.
And also in January, we would do the reliability report. We do that every January, so I will present that.
Okay.
And then I guess sort of an open-ended question is, President Chan, as you commented on earlier, it would be good to see things, however you define important items
Yeah,
that
major
will
strategy,
that will
business
go before
decisions.
city council to have those come here first. So are you aware of any such items in the near term that we ought to add to the agenda based on large items that might go before the city council?
At this time, we don't have any that I recall. There's some power plant items that we are still looking at that we have not scheduled the meeting. We also have to consider in certain occasions there's some urgency when we need to go to council, and this has been a struggle, I believe, for us for years because we meet once a month and the city council meets every week. There's always been a scheduling issue, so to the extent that we can write you a memo as to what's going on, we will do that so that it doesn't affect the timing that we need to get the approval from city council.
I've been here on the commission at least probably 7 years now, and I do recall instances where, if the matter is important enough, we are always successful in getting everyone together for a special meeting. So what you're suggesting is good. Write us a memo, and then we will look at it and try and schedule a special meeting if needed. That would be hugely appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll do the same thing we did with the rates. You recall,
Right.
we tried to get your recommendation before we presented to council, and I believe we ended up with a special meeting, so we would do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Just to repeat, with the renewable portfolio standard and anything that's like really hugely important right now to the utility and the environment, we are definitely interested and would definitely like to hear about it before it goes to council. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I don't have any other.
No? Nothing else? Anybody else? No? Okay, next item, please.
7, request for appeal for Edwin Turgalstanian.
Madam President, members of the Commission, you have on your agenda the consideration of whether to grant an appeal regarding an allegation of a meter tampering under Section 13.44.500H of the Glendale Municipal Code. And under Chapter 2.72 of the Glendale Municipal Code, which governs your duties and responsibilities, you serve as the appellate body for this type of a consideration. I've distributed to each of you the appeal procedures that were adopted by this commission some years ago. And essentially, your task today is to make the determination whether or not you believe that an appeal should be granted. And the standard of review is substantial evidence. The burden of proof is on the person seeking the appeal, and their duty is, their obligation in order for you to grant an appeal is to prove to you that substantial evidence exists which warrants the granting of an appeal. So I want to clarify my role in this because, there can be confusion. I do represent Glendale Water and Power. However, for purposes of this proceeding, I haven't been involved in this matter, and I represent you as the body making the decision. I don't represent GWP in trying to convince you that an appeal should or should not be granted. We have another attorney who fills that role for the city. So with that, I would encourage you to turn it over to the appellant. Today is not the hearing, so you shouldn't get into a lengthy discussion about the matter. It's merely considering whether there is that substantial evidence standard being met. With that, I turn it over to you, Madam President.
Okay. Are we going to have a presentation or?
Well, I would suggest that you bring up I believe the appellant has counsel here, and you should allow him some time to speak. You can make a determination how much time.
Please come to the
Typically, we
podium.
give 5 minutes for speakers, but you can extend or shorten as you see fit, and then perhaps give the city an opportunity to respond.
Okay, yeah, 5 minutes. Would be
Good
fine.
afternoon, Commissioners. I'll be very brief. As she mentioned, today's role is to determine whether or not there was substantial evidence presented for the appeal. We submit that there is. We submitted an appeal packet that contained evidence, substantial evidence, that our client, the customer, Mr. Edward Delgado-Stanian, didn't reside at the residence at the time of this alleged tap that was presented. There was sufficient evidence presented in the form of a divorce judgment. He was divorced at the time, and I won't, without going into the details. Part of the evidence that was submitted justifies a hearing to demonstrate that he was not present at the property, nor did he have knowledge, either actual or constructive, for an appeal for these fines to be assessed on him personally.
Sorry, can I just ask you to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. My name is Ruben Veroizen. I'm attorney for the customer appellant, Mr. Edward Galistanian. Edwin Del Terra Galistanian.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
That's all I have. That is, we have submitted the substantial evidence required for us to have a hearing on the matter, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commission President, Commission members. Doreen Martrosian, Assistant City Attorney on behalf of Glendale Water and Power. Commission members, in this matter, the record speaks for itself. Despite the appellant's dissolution matter pending at the time of the situation that is before us, the account was at all times in the appellant's name. I would submit respectfully to the Commission that albeit it may be a matter between appellant and his estranged spouse at the time, it could be a civil matter, but when it comes to the account holder's liability to the utility, the account was unfortunately in the appellant's name. And the only recourse that the utility had and has is to request that the appellant make the utility whole for the wrongs that have been committed on the account. Without getting into the facts, because we don't want to have a hearing, a pre-hearing before the hearing, I will submit with that statement. Thank you.
Okay. I think I would like to get a vote from each commissioner at this time, yes or no. Before doing that, do you all need any additional information?
Well, I'm curious, maybe Ms. Cadiz could further explain the loss of revenue. I mean, if the defendant gets an appeal and is successful, where is that revenue come from? Can we charge the spouse who's residing in the residence then, or do we just not forfeit the loss because if the appeal is successful?
Well, it would be for this period of time that's under consideration, it would be a loss of revenue to the utility. This would be the period of time during which the appellant was the account holder.
Right. And regardless of whatever his personal reasons are, we can't really go back and charge whoever's residing in that residence because the previous occupant may not be the account holder, so we can't have any recourse.
Well, you'd want to look at the provisions, and so what the code allows is to charge it against the customer. So you'd have to look at who the customer is at the relevant time period.
So maybe you can clarify for me, if, let's say, a building owner is the account holder of the utility, and then he rents it out. If someone comes in and uses the facility, let's say do unlawful things without the owner's permission or knowing, who do we charge to, the account holder, or do we go back and maybe prosecute the tenant?
It would depend on the circumstances, but typically, so the tenant would typically be the customer, right? So that would be the first recourse for the utility.
So what happens if it's not? If it's the owner who is the account holder and then he rents it out to the tenant and the tenant does unlawful things?
Well, then that would be a matter between the tenant and the owner. Our recourse would be against who we have the account with. However, in the tenant-landlord situation, there's an additional provision in our code that allows us to then go after the landlord. So in the reverse situation, if our customer is the tenant and we don't have recourse against the tenant in that circumstance, we could go against them.
And I have another question before moving forward as well. I know the way we go about it would be a motion, okay, to either grant it or not grant it. And if we don't all agree, then it's an automatic no. Is that what it is? Or how do we go about it?
It's majority rules. So
Majority?
if three of you intend to grant, a majority of the quorum, if three of you intend to grant the appeal, then it's granted. But if less than three, then the decision of the general manager stands and it's deemed final.
Okay. Decision of the general manager at this point is no, right?
Decision of the general manager is no, and you should have, just for the record, you should have those materials have been submitted to you by the
Right.
Glendale Water and Power Department.
Right. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions. The materials provided to us, was that to the extent everything that was provided to the city as far as evidence for the EWP customer, or was there more stuff that we haven't seen?
Well, I'll turn to counsel for GWP to respond to that.
President, Commission members, that is the complete record as I stand here today. There aren't any additional documents. If we do happen to come into possession of additional documents, of course, we share that with opposing counsel and with the Commission.
Okay.
Okay.
And one other question. According to the terms and conditions, I guess, of the contract that a customer signs when they become a customer of GWP, I'm assuming there's some clear language that says that regardless of if you're living there or not living there, if there's anything that is, tampered with, any illegal activity, you're responsible. Is there such language in the contract?
Well, a customer doesn't sign a contract per se, but they do apply for service, and they're subject to the terms and conditions of the Glendale Municipal Code, where it is quite clear that a customer is responsible for any charges on the account, whether or not they're residing in the residence.
Whether or not they're residing.
Correct.
And one other question. I'm assuming this is not the first time this has happened in the city, or maybe it is. I can't imagine it is. So, what have we done in the past? What have what have we learned in the past, and what has the city done in cases where this situation was presented to the commission in similar fashion? Basically, what has the ruling been? If the customer was not at fault, but they were not living there, were they still assessed the fee? Can you give us some feedback since you've been?
To my knowledge, there's only been one other appeal to this commission, at least recently. And candidly, I don't recall the outcome. I don't know if the circumstances were the same, where it was someone who was not residing in the residence versus residing in the residence. So I don't know that we've ever had this particular factual pattern come before you. Well, it's up to the
May I add
event.
something briefly? Just a tid fact to address, Commissioner, you concerned about revenue.
I'm sorry.
May I address something for
Oh, sure, please, come on, no problem.
To just a brief fact is, in terms of who's responsible for payment here, since they were husband and wife, the GWP has since discovered this, has apportioned the amount of the usage and the additional fines. So if it's determined that my client wasn't responsible, if there should be in hearing, the person responsible would be the spouse, just to address the concerns of who would ultimately be responsible for payment.
I will, Commission members, Commission President, I will defer to Ms. Vallier to correct me if I'm misstating anything. But the apportionment is not a portion of the total that is due and owing by this appellant. Again, what we do is we look at who had ownership of the account, if you will, for the period that we're seeking recovery of lost revenue. So any amounts recovered, it wouldn't be double recovery, is what I'm trying to indicate to the Commission, because the amount that is at issue, payments have not been towards the amount, have not been made towards the amount.
And the name on the account is not Mr. and Mrs. It's just Mr. Correct.
For the period at issue, the name on the account is the appellant's only.
Only. Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get into community property issues or get too technical, but does that even come into play here? Does it matter?
Not for purposes of this appeal, no.
Not for purposes, okay.
No.
And I do have another question. If we all say, or if majority say yes, we should have a public hearing, and what that does is just they're going to come and present, give us all the facts, and it will be at that time the Commission's decision at that time whether
Yes.
to say yes or no.
Yes, and it would be, I should note that it's a de novo hearing, which means clean slate, you consider it without any deference to decision by the general manager or to the appellant. You just take a fresh eye and you take a look at the facts and make your determination.
And it will be done here and just with all of us.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So would you like me to do it, Christine, or would you?
So you have in your packet two potential motions, one granting an appeal, one denying an appeal. I've left the date blank. You can decide, maybe perhaps next month is the obvious choice, but it's up to you if should you decide to grant the appeal. So you can consider whether you can either take comments from the commissioners or someone can make a motion and it can be seconded and you can proceed that way.
One last
So
question.
7.1, I'm sorry.
Sorry, one last question again. And the final amount is, what do we look at? I don't wanna
Both are hereby denied. Both
No.
are denied.
There are two motions. So one
there
is a
are two
denial,
motions.
one is a grant.
One
No,
is hereby-
I
Amount.
I don't have the grant.
Commissioner Ajemian, the final amount as I have is $1,678.11.
Okay,
That's the amount, the $1,000.
1678.
Yeah, that's the amount in question.
Full
Okay.
amount of question. I don't know if it's like a huge amount or a small. A medium amount.
I think that's. For this, these are the
Mine,
same.
both mine are
I
denied.
just gave you.
You gave me one, that's granted.
Hereby set
Set,
for hearing.
yeah, that's
It might have
set
been
by
mixed.
hearing. Yeah, it's just,
Do you need copies of the?
no,
motions? You got it?
yeah, I'll share it with Commissioner Timian. So, do you want to take a vote from every single person, or should I do it, or how?
Well, I guess, is there a motion in either regard? Is there a motion either granting the appeal or denying the appeal? You could start there and then see if there's a second.
Go ahead.
I would move that we deny the appeal.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion denying the appeal stands.
And then for the record, we have absent is Commissioner Hale.
Yes, and what we'll do is we'll finalize this motion, and we'll let the motion reflect his absence today.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Adjournment?
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Second.
Okay, I'll say aye.
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 Adjourn, thank you. Thank you.